Hi, precious ones. Thanks so much for being here with me today. So, I'm going to talk about a download that I got a few months ago about hell being a frequency rather than a place, as we are often taught in, well, I know personally I was taught that from Christianity. So, a lot of major religions um, will tell you and are holding the belief that hell is basically a place that you go to when you die if you've done bad things, and in this space you get punished, tortured, whatever. The details vary a lot. Um, Personally, I was raised Catholic, so that's the background that I'm coming from, and that's the background that I'm going to be referencing throughout this video, just because that's just what I'm familiar with, and I don't want to speak about anything that I'm not informed about, basically. So, um, using Catholicism and Christianity as an example, they very much believe that hell is a place that you go to where you are punished. And even in Christianity, what characterizes hell is the experience of intense suffering. So that much also applies to hell being a frequency rather than a place. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notes just to make sure that I stay on track because I tend to ramble. I have a butterfly brain a little bit. So yeah, so let's get a little bit into that. So what do I mean when I say that hell is not a place? So what I mean when I say that hell is not a place is that it is not well, a couple of things. The first is that it's not a physical place. So it's not a physical place that you go to full of fire and brimstone and pitchforks where you are punished. And the second thing that I mean when I say that hell is not a place is that hell is also not a non-physical place. So not only is it not a physical place where your flesh is tortured or whatever, it is also not an energetic space or an energetic realm or an energetic dimension that is non-physical where you are tortured and where there is fire and brimstone and pitchforks. So it's not either of those things, is my understanding. What hell is, instead, is that it is a frequency. And what I mean by it being a frequency is that a frequency is essentially a vibration, right? So let's think about it like sound. So sounds, each kind of sound has a certain wavelength, right? That's what it's comprised of. And when that wavelength enters your ear and you hear it, it elicits an emotion in you, right? It elicits a reaction in you, and this is involuntary. It's not a matter of weakness or a matter of susceptibility. It's just how the body is programmed to respond, right? Sound is one of our main senses. It's how we get information. So hell being a frequency means that it is an energy that you are experiencing yourself personally. And you're also experiencing it primarily actually in your body, in your physical body. So hell is not a place that you go to where you are punished and where you experience suffering. Hell is actually an experience that you have in your day-to-day life in your body that is comprised of intense suffering. So I'm gonna just throw a quick little definition out here for the sake of clarity. So essentially, hell being a frequency to me means that hell is characterized by intense suffering, which I've already mentioned, and it is characterized furthermore by suffering that is consistent, so it's constant, and it's insistent, right? It is going on all the time. So when you are truly trapped in the frequency of hell, and that's what it does, it traps you there, right? It gets harder and harder to get out of it the longer you remain there, because eventually it becomes your normal state, essentially. But you know that you're in hell when your suffering is persistent. And this is the type of suffering that people with any kind of mental illness experience. Okay? If you have depression, if you have anxiety, if you have an eating disorder, I've had all of these things, okay? If you have OCD, if you have any kind of mental illness whatsoever, and I'm putting it in quotation marks, not because it's not real, it's very real, but because I don't necessarily agree with everything that the medical model says about mental illness. So that's why I'm going to use quotation marks like this, little bunny ears, because those are not really my words. They're just words I'm using because we all have a common understanding of what they mean. So if you have experienced or are experiencing mental illness of any kind, then you have been in hell. You've gone through hell, or you are going through hell right now, because that's what hell is. It's intense, consistent, persistent suffering, and you don't experience it in some other dimension. You experience it right here in this dimension, in your body, because your body is where your emotions are felt. It's where they are housed and stored. It's where they are processed. So this whole concept that you leave your body and go someplace else, pretty much, to be tortured and experience hell and experience suffering, is simply not the case from my perspective. Just want to make sure I'm staying on track here. Okay, so the other thing about hell being a frequency is that eventually, and this doesn't happen with everyone, but I've seen it happen with quite a few people, eventually when you are trapped and stuck in this frequency for a long enough period of time, eventually what happens is that the suffering that is intense and persistent and constant that you experience every day in your waking life, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, right? You are being attacked by these horrible thoughts, horrible feelings, maybe even horrible experiences in your outer life as well. But when you are stuck there for long enough, what ends up happening is that not only are you experiencing this intense suffering in your waking life, you start experiencing this intense suffering even when you go to sleep. So you're experiencing this intense suffering not only on this plane, which I guess we can just call the 3D, right? It's consensual reality. You also begin to experience this suffering on the astral plane as well, which is where we go to when we're asleep. That's where we are when we're dreaming. And I mean, there's lots of different versions, not versions, but there's lots of different frequencies even in the astral, right? So because hell is a frequency that you are experiencing, that you are carrying with you, sometimes it can begin to actually follow you into your sleep, into your dreams. And this is when people begin to experience sleep paralysis, which is really, really, really common among people with mental illness. It's just that people don't talk about it because there's a lot of stigma around it. They're afraid of sounding like they're crazy, right? And also, no one has a real explanation for it. Not even science really has an explanation for what sleep paralysis is. They have some theories, but they don't know why it happens, and they don't really know how to stop it either, right? But that's going to be another video, actually. I am going to do another video or perhaps a series about sleep paralysis, because I've known a lot of people with it, and I've had a lot of experience personally and through other people with that. But anyway, when you're trapped in this frequency, you can begin to experience suffering also while you're asleep in the astral plane. You can have experiences of being attacked, you know, all kinds of horrible things that people experience in sleep paralysis, whether you see things, feel things, hear things, or some kind of combination of all of it. That's not really a consequence of you're going to this other place that is hell to be attacked. That is a consequence of your actual set everyday frequency. The frequency that you vibrate on most of the time is a frequency of hell. So you will continue to experience that frequency on multiple levels of your experience and multiple levels of your being, unfortunately. And this is the reason, it being a frequency rather than a place, this is the reason, or one of the reasons, that it is so incredibly difficult to get out of hell. This is one of the reasons why it's so incredibly difficult to recover from mental illnesses, because this suffering is so consistent and persistent that it just invades every aspect of your existence, essentially, right? However, But I am here to say that you can get out of it. So you do not have to remain trapped in hell forever. It's hard to get out of the pit, as I call it, because that's what it feels like to me when I'm at my very, very worst. It feels like I'm just really deep underground and everything is muffled and slow and numb and I'm dissociating constantly.